Do you know what's stopping you from doing that one thing you've always wanted to do? You don't, because it doesn't exist. This is Josh Bauer, and no, it really doesn't exist. So there are some episodes, like the last one, where I got very specific and very technical, and my goal in that episode was to provide a fairly significant level of value to whoever's listening to it, right? Because whoever's listening to an episode about tax liens, aside from the people who are just listening to it because I sent them a link to the podcast, like, hey, I started a podcast, listen to my first episode, blah, blah, blah. Except for those people, anybody that actually clicked on the episode that just came to the podcast and didn't know who I was, they're listening to it because they want to know about tax liens and they want to get some value out of it. So that's the type of person that I made my last episode for. This episode is, well, I don't know about this one. I guess we'll see how it turns out as it goes. But there will be some episodes probably where I'm not making as thoroughly thought through and produced and professional of an episode as some of my other episodes. I mean, right now, I do have a microphone, like an actual microphone, but there might be some times that, I don't know, soon I'll probably be a truck driver for a little bit, who knows, you know, a lot of hours on the road. There might be some times where I just have my phone and I just put it next to me, or I have a microphone in my ear, or like earphones with a microphone built in, and I'm just recording it on that, and I just do some post-processing to make it sound half decent afterwards. Like, I don't know, maybe I won't even edit it. There are definitely some, not everything on this podcast is going to be professional level quality, just because I don't care enough to make everything professional level quality. I mean, if you're listening to me talk, about some of the stuff that is not super important to your success or existence, then I'm assuming it's because you want to hear me talk and not because you are super focused on your productivity, right? And listen, I love productivity, theoretically. I'm not always good at it, but I love productivity. But at the same time, not everything I do is about productivity. And some things I just do for enjoyment. So, yeah, I mean, some of this podcast is just going to be, I'm just going to hit play and go with it. Okay, so that said, what is this episode going to be about? Okay, well, motorcycles, right? So, I don't know, my dad owned a motorcycle when I was younger. He's no longer alive. But he had his leg amputated earlier on, and so I guess when that happened, he went from a cruiser, like a Harley type cruiser, I don't know if it was actually Harley, over to a scooter. It was a Bergman 500 was the type of scooter. It was Suzuki was the name brand. And he would take me out riding on that when I would say the youngest I was, if I had to guess, 8 or 9, I would say. So I have very early memories of riding on a motorcycle. So that's I guess where my exposure started when I was young. Oh my gosh, I actually forgot about this. Holy crap. I used to have these toy sport bikes, and they're like bigger than Hot Wheels. I mean, I didn't forget about it, but wow, it just never occurred to me that I went from having these toys to actually riding them. Like, I didn't actually forget about the toys, but I never made that mental connection. Wow. Yeah, I used to have these little toy sport bikes, and I would, vroom them around everywhere. And, so yeah, I guess that was some of my earlier exposure. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's TV and stuff too, but, I wouldn't say it was in my blood like some people say it. Like, some people were like, oh, I was born on a motorcycle and I was meant to ride motorcycles and all this stuff. I would not say that's the case with me. I didn't actually have the desire to buy a motorcycle until I was probably I would have to say like 17 or 18, maybe 18 probably. 18. I remember I was at FLCC, Finger Lakes Community College. That's where I went to college. And I remember across the street there was this apartment complex, and there was always this black sport bike over there. And I would pass it a lot. I actually used to live over there for a little bit at that apartment complex, and I would pass that motorcycle, and I was like, you know, that's got to be cool to have. It was a sport bike. It was probably a mid, CBR 300 or 600 or something, completely black. And I feel like that was the first time. I was 18 or 19 years old. That's probably the first time that I was like, I think I want one of them. And at the time, I had the money, but I just didn't really want to spend it on it. I had other things to, I was hoping to be a little bit more responsible. And, at this time I'm 18, so I'm not a financial guru, but I'm smart enough to know that when you buy a motorcycle, first of all, you no longer have that cash anymore. And second of all, any equity that you have in the vehicle is going to go down. So, I was 18, sure, but I also wasn't stupid, and I knew that a motorcycle was not a very good long-term investment strategy. So I was like, yeah, Josh, just don't do that, okay? Please don't do that. But somehow I managed to only make it like another year before I fucking did it. And I ended up buying myself a Kawasaki Ninja 300. I wanted a 400. In fact, I spent a little while looking up YouTube videos of the best sport bike to get as a beginner. And, there's all the 300 and 300s and 400s, and there's a CBR, and there's the Yamaha R3, and Ninja 300, Ninja 400. I had settled on the Ninja 400, and just like I bought my car, I had ended up deciding to go with Facebook Marketplace. So I go on Facebook Marketplace. This was, I'd say, September-ish of 2022. And, before I even go into the process of how I bought it, let me just clarify. When did I delete TikTok? I deleted TikTok a while ago. I think this would have been Instagram Reels. I was watching a reel on Instagram, and the song was what's the name of the song? Shit. It was Katy Perry. Was the artist? It's like not Alien. E.T. It was E.T. by Katy Perry. Was the overlay for the reel, and there's just this. I don't want to call it stupid, but it was like mundane video of some guy with a Insta360 on the back of his bike, and he was just riding down a highway in the middle of the night. He wasn't even doing anything crazy, but it had that music over top of it, and something just clicked in my head. I was like, why am I sitting in my office, in my chair, watching somebody else ride a motorcycle when I want a motorcycle and I have the money to buy a motorcycle? Why am I watching it instead of doing it? And that's just one of those things where you have that, I'm not sure I'd call it a revelation, but it's a realization of, why am I watching somebody else do the thing that I want to do? And it's one thing when you are watching them and you are indifferent to it, or you're seeing it happen and you're like, oh, okay. It's another thing when you're watching it for entertainment. And that was the thing that particularly disgusted me. It's like, okay, not only am I watching somebody else ride down the road on a motorcycle, like, okay, fine, that's one thing. Yeah, they're doing something I want to do. But it's not just that. I am actually finding entertainment in watching somebody else do something that I would prefer to be doing. And in a moment, I'm just wasting my life. Like, that is... The time that I was watching that video was 10 seconds of my life I'll never get back. And by the time I'm done with that video, sure, it was stimulating my brain in the moment because my brain considers it a virtual substitute for the real life activity. But by the time I'm done, I feel like shit because I realize that I just got done watching something that I want to do, watching somebody else do something that I want to do. And as soon as I'm done watching the video, it just emphasizes the fact that that person was not me. So, watching it stimulates your brain in the moment, but then it's like, okay, after you're done, what did that do for you? It did absolutely nothing. If you even want to call that entertainment, I don't know, good on you. And it's not just topic of motorcycles, anything. You know, I deleted TikTok ages ago, like back in 2020. That was just, dude, I watched that for hours, and it was crazy because it was such a waste of my time. And eventually I deleted Instagram off my phone. I wish, you know, for a while there was a bug on Instagram to where the Reels feature wasn't even accessible to my Instagram app, and I loved it. And then they fixed it, and I was like, okay, now I have the little Reels icon down there, and so now it's tempting to click, and I get pulled in there just like I did with TikTok. Eventually, I ended up deleting Instagram off my phone, but for a different reason. YouTube Shorts was another one I kind of got pulled into a little bit, but I'm better with not getting tempted on that one because I don't click the YouTube app that much anyway, to where I'm tempted by the tiny little Shorts logo. But anyway, other than motorcycles, there's a bunch of stuff on those short form vertical scrolling video apps that is like, why are you watching this shit? What is this doing for you? Whether it's something that you want to be doing but you're too lazy or broke or scared to do yourself, so you're just going to watch somebody else do it as a substitute. Or whether it's some dumb form of entertainment that you find mentally stimulating. Listen, I don't think there's a person on earth that is going to use one of these short form video apps and actually feel good about it after they get done. If you are, then maybe hit me up and tell me your story. I'll get you on for an interview. Yeah, we might be doing some interviews later. That's a bit of a spoiler alert there. But yeah, nobody actually feels good after they watch this stuff. It's addicting, and that's, you know, it stimulates your brain, and then you're done, and then you, rightfully so, feel like you wasted your time. Anyway, that's the story where I was watching a motorcycle, and I was like, okay, so why am I watching somebody else do the thing, not only the thing that I want to do, but that I am fully capable of doing, but I'm just not doing it, and for what reason? So I went out, I bought, first I looked up, you know, best beginner motorcycle. I settled on a Ninja 400. I went on Facebook Marketplace, and I said, okay, I'm going to find a black Ninja 400. And then I found this black and green Ninja 300. I was like, okay, so 300. It's a little bit less power and everything than I wanted. But goddamn, this was a color that I could not resist. I don't know if other people have the same visual attraction to the color green that I did when I saw it paired with that black, but I had to take the downgrade in power because there was nothing else on Facebook Marketplace at the time in the area that came even close to meeting the level of visual appeal that color scheme had. That's a very fancy way of saying I loved the color of that motorcycle. So I went and bought it. Just like that, I went to Wegmans and I took $4,000 out of an ATM. I had to do it in chunks because I think it wouldn't let me take more than 600 out at a time or something. And I had an electric unicycle at the time. So I rode to Wegmans, Canandaigua on my electric unicycle and rode back with $4,000 in cash. And a couple days later, I rode up to, where was it? It wasn't Henrietta. Some Rochester suburb. Was it Henry? You know what? It was. It was like West Henrietta or something. I went up there and met this kid. I brought my dirt bike helmet with me. I was in my car. I had no plan on exactly how I didn't know how to ride a motorcycle at this point. I've never ridden a dirt bike. Never ridden shit. I didn't know how to ride. But I took a motorcycle helmet up. A dirt bike helmet that I used when I was on my electric unicycle. A little motorcycle jacket, again, that I used for my electric unicycle. So I had a little bit of gear already. I took it up there in the backseat of my car, parked it, and my plan was, after I gave him the cash and got the title, I was just going to take the bike and learn how to ride it like right in front of the road, and then ride it home, and then like take an Uber back to get my car and pick up my car or something. And that was going to be my plan. But this was so actually the kid who was selling it, he was like my age. Actually, he was younger than me, and he was selling it so that he would have enough money to buy his first car. It was a nice family. His parents were nice and everything. And basically, what they did was they followed me home. So I drove home in my car, and the dad, like all of them came, and they didn't have to. It was only necessary for like two people to come, but the dad came. I don't know if it was his mom or stepmom, but she came, and then he came on a motorcycle too. So there's 2 motorcycles in a car following me home, and that was nice because now it was practical for them, because if I crashed on their insurance or something, that would have raised their insurance, and they didn't want me to drive it home unregistered or anything, because I was willing to do it. I was like, hey, I'll just wing it. I'll just learn how to drive right in front of this was after I already paid them in cash. This wasn't like a test ride or something. This was like, hey, I'll buy it, and then if I crash this thing, it's on me. You already got the cash, so I'll learn how to ride, and I'll just drive it home. But they're like, oh no, we don't, we want you to get home safe and everything. So I definitely appreciate them helping me out there. So they basically transported it. They just followed me back to the college I was staying at the time. And so I get this bike back to the college, and the day of, obviously, there's no way you just buy a motorcycle and you don't immediately try to learn how to ride it. I don't think don't get me wrong, I've already spent, by this point in time, maybe half an hour on YouTube trying to figure out what the hell a clutch is, and because I've never driven a... I don't think so. But at this point, I've never in my life driven a manual vehicle. This would have been like October 2022. So I've spent no more than 30 minutes figuring out how to ride this motorcycle on YouTube. And this was before I bought it. So now that I bought it, now that it's sitting in my parking lot, by the way, it's a nice day out. It's October, but it's a somewhat nice day out. I figure out, I get on it, and I try it out. I'm like, okay, yep. I just put it in first gear. Good job, Josh. And, okay, you bring it up a little bit. That puts it in neutral. By the way, when I first started this thing, there was definitely some nostalgia from my dad's motorcycle, because it was the exact same... Man, I'm just remembering it. It was the exact same. But as soon as I hit start, that was my first, wow, this sounds just like my dad's motorcycle. And not the exhaust, but the sound of the starting. And you never think of it. Once you ride motorcycles for a while, it's like, it never occurs to you, but you got to keep in mind that I've never really been on a motorcycle since the one with my dad. And obviously most, if not all, motorcycles are going to sound very similar in terms of the starter, I think. But yeah, that was before buying that motorcycle. The most recent memory of me being on a motorcycle would have been my dad's, and so the first thing I thought of was like, wow, this sounds so similar, and it brought back a lot of memories. I was like, well, I guess now this is me, But yeah, I was like, okay, so I got it in first gear, put it up, halfway, put the pedal, what do you call it? Shifter, pedal, I don't know what the fuck you go. Put it up halfway, it's in neutral. Put it up all the way, it's in second. Okay, put it up again, it's in third. And I was just driving around a little bit, and I managed, dude, I was very, I don't know if I want to say I was nervous. I definitely had no idea what I was doing. I was worried I was going to crash it for sure. And I rode it around a parking lot. I took it to this bigger parking lot that was on the other side of the college. And this was a huge parking lot. And this was, October 2022. I drove it around there, and that's basically where I learned how to ride the thing. I swerved it. I did circles and figure eights and stuff around these light poles. Probably got it up to 40 or 50 miles an hour. I was scared to death that I was going to crash it or something. And that's where I learned how to ride it. And then I ended up driving it home. Keep in mind, and when I say home, I mean it was my stepdad's trailer at the time. It was in Seneca County. It was about an hour southeast, but you have to go around Seneca Lake. So basically go over through Geneva, Waterloo, go straight down. So that was about an hour trip. And I passed a cop a couple times. One time I was in the Geneva area. I almost stalled going through an intersection in front of a cop, And this was bad because I had no insurance, I had no registration, I had no motorcycle license or motorcycle permit. What else did I not have? Insurance, registration, license. Yeah, I had nothing. I mean, I was as illegal as it gets when it comes to riding a motorcycle, and I almost stalled. Basically taking off from the stoplight. It's like didn't give enough gas. But yeah, by the way, when I was learning how to ride it in that big parking lot, I kept stalling over and over and over. I was like, what the hell am I doing wrong? So I went back to my apartment and watched more YouTube videos on how to not stall a motorcycle. Like this was how, but basically, I didn't realize that you have to pull a throttle at the same time that you let go of the clutch. I thought that all you had to do was let go of the clutch slowly and then hit the throttle. Like I said, at this point, I really had no idea how manual vehicles work. So there was hills and stuff where I was just letting go of the clutch and didn't realize that you have to give it throttle to in order for it to not stall sometimes. But yeah, I drove that motorcycle home. That was scary, and it was also memorable. I remember the route I took. In fact, I didn't take Route 5 and 20 back. I took like this other route because I was worried I was going to get caught. But I mean, to be fair, like, I just bought this thing and I had every intention of legalizing it. So if I had gotten pulled over, I'm pretty sure I even had a backpack on me, if I'm not mistaken, that had the bill of sale or copy of bill of sale or something, and a title and stuff. So like I would have showed that to a cop, and I imagine they would have let me off. Then again, I didn't even have a motorcycle license, but I had my driver's license. But point being, I just bought the thing, and I had every intention of getting it legal, so I probably would have gotten let off. I hope, if it was a reasonable cop, the fact that I bought it that day. But yeah, I drove it home, and the only animal that I know of, excluding insects, obviously, because you can't count them. You just would have no idea how to even count them. The only animal I've ever killed on that motorcycle was a squirrel, and I killed it. I killed it the first day I ever rode that motorcycle. So it's kind of fun. It was not a skill issue. Like it came out of nowhere, and I slowed. I think I even swerved. Did I swerve? I don't know if I swerved, but it definitely was not a skill issue, and there was nothing I could have done. It just ran right out in front of me. And this was the first day I owned a motorcycle. This was down in like Ovid. It's like, what are the chances? Because now it's October 2024. It's been a solid 2 years. I've put about 17,000 miles on that motorcycle. Never once have I killed anything else. And yet the very first day I owned it is the only day I've ever killed any sort of, I've never hit a deer, never killed any squirrels or badgers or beavers or chipmunks or anything sizable, even a snake. Not that I know of. What are the chances? I mean, how many days? I don't know. The chances are just crazy. Again, it was not a skill issue. It was the thing ran out way too quick. I would have not been able to do anything, even if that happened today. But yeah, I rode it back to where, back to home base, I guess you could call it at the time. And my stepdad let me keep it in his garage, so it was under a cover for the winter. And Thanksgiving break and Christmas break and stuff, I went back there and I rode it in the winter. In fact, like I said, I didn't say this, but other than that first day that I learned how to ride it in the parking lot of my college, that was, other than that, basically I learned to ride that thing in the winter. When we're talking sub-freezing temperatures is when I basically learned how to ride that motorcycle. Everything except for that first day. The first day, it was a pretty nice day out, but everything after that, majority of my mileage I put on it in that first couple months, it was sub-freezing. In fact, by this point, I think I've dropped the bike 7 or 8 times, and all of that was probably within the first couple months. But 3 times, 3 of those 7 or 8, well, I think it's actually 6 or 7, but 3 of them were within the same 5 minutes of each other. And it was this one road in front of that trailer in Interlaken. and I was riding. I was okay. So this one road in front of us, it freezes over before all the other roads do. So there was no snow or ice or anything like that on the other roads, but this one right in front of my house, shit ton of snow on it. So I had to try to ride it if I wanted to ride my motorcycle at all. And this was like December, and like, come on, this is out in the country in the middle of nowhere. I have nothing else to do. Of course, I want to just ride the motorcycle that I just bought, right? When the roads are fine, except for this one. So I'm trying to ride this motorcycle like 2 miles per hour. I'm not exaggerating, not downplaying that at all. And I'm trying to ride it in the snow. We're talking like 2-3 inches of snow. Now maybe it's packed down, but snow is snow. Okay, this is on the road. And before I get it to the other road where there's no more snow on it anymore, it's not even because it's plowed. It's just because like none of these roads are plowed. It's just whatever the pavement material is on the other ones, apparently it absorbs heat quicker or whatever, and so the snow just melts off sooner. Before I got to that road, I dropped this thing 3 times trying to get there. The front wheel kept sliding out, and it's funny, I didn't damage it at all during those because, again, we're on snow. But, I was hoping that the neighbors weren't laughing at me and stuff. They probably were. Imagine some moron trying to ride a sport bike, 2 inches of snow on the road, and he drops it twice and still is smart enough to continue trying to go in the same direction. Anyway, yeah, so I got used to sub-freezing temperatures on that motorcycle. I got used to dressing up warm, very warm, and that was my experience in buying it. I passed my road test in February, first time. I did a lot of practice on it before then. I took the test in Canandaigua, where my college is, and it was very cold, but there was no snow on the ground, thankfully. At least no snow on the roads when I took the road test. And my uncle helped me out with that because you need someone with a motorcycle license to accompany you. And passed my road test in February. Got it registered, I think, pretty soon after. So that's kind of the origin story. And then after that winter, I started riding it a lot in Canandaigua. Started riding it just for some of my errands, and then a lot of leisure. I rode around the Canandaigua Lake a couple times. I did a couple different nice rides. I did my first group ride, actually, I believe it was in February. In fact, it was within a week of when I passed my road test. There was this like 60 or 70 degree day in February, and it was crazy, and there was a group ride. I skipped out on a class to go on it. I think it was one of my business or marketing classes or something. And if I remember correctly, the professor was abnormally, when I say abnormally, I mean compared to other professors, extremely boring. And I'm not going to say who it was, actually. In fact, I do remember who it was. I'm not going to say who it was. Let me just put it this way. He was a good guy, and he did a good job teaching, but some people's tone of voice are just so monotone and boring, and it's a circular feedback loop. It's a negative downward spiral, because when your voice is like that, and when your personality or whatever is like that, it causes your students to just turn off like a light switch, and then it causes you as a professor to become less intrigued about what you're doing, and so then you get even more boring, and it's just a downward spiral. But yeah, this was one of my more boring classes, and even my boring classes, in college, I basically went to all my classes for the most part, even the ones that a lot of other people didn't show up to. But this was one of the situations where I was like, you know what? Nah, I've never been on a group ride before. This is gonna be fun. I'm going on a group ride. This guy can wait, and this professor can wait, right? So I in fact, it's funny because I was on the Canandaigua City Pier. This is where I met these people, and they were like, hey, you want to go on a group ride? And I was like, it depends on the time. I got a class at this time. And I was like, you know what? I'm probably not going to be able to. But somehow I think we exchanged phone numbers or something. And by the time I got back to college, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to do it. So I texted the guy. I was like, did you leave yet? He was like, no. So I just drove right back to the pier, and we left. We didn't go around, did we? No, we did not go around the lake. But we went down to, what is it? Bristol. overlook or something like that. We took a couple pictures down there. It's a pretty popular spot. And then we drove back up using a different route than we came, but we stayed on the west side of Canandaigua Lake the whole time. And that was my first group ride. It was terrifying. I mean, sharing a lane with another biker at that point, I've only had a couple thousand miles, if even that I put on the bike by that point. In fact, what are we talking? What am I even talking about? I bought it in October. We have November, December, January, February. Those are the only months I had that bike at that point. And most of that was winter. Most of that, the bike was stored in like an hour away from where I was going to college. So I did not have a couple thousand miles on it. I don't know what I'm talking about. I had very little experience by that point, and yet sharing another lane with another biker was definitely pretty terrifying for me. But I managed it, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it too, obviously. And yeah, after that, I rode around Canandaigua, got better on it. I would say Canandaigua is definitely where I learned how to ride that motorcycle. When I say learned, I mean like got good at it, like got confident in my skills and stuff. In terms of getting pulled over, it's funny, but I've actually gotten pulled over a lot more in my car than I have on my motorcycle. So I've gotten pulled over on a motorcycle twice. Once was speeding, once was lane splitting, but I never got a ticket on the motorcycle. But on my car, I got, I got, 2 fix-it tickets in my car for having headlight out in Canandaigua. And then I got I got another ticket on my car in Buffalo. I was going, 78 on the 290. And I didn't actually get a speeding ticket. I got a ticket because my inspection was like 14 days out of date or something. And which was nice, I guess, that he didn't give me a speeding ticket. And then I have a speeding ticket recently in my car from it hasn't been I haven't pled guilty to it, so I'm fighting that one. Hopefully they'll plead it down. And if they do, then I'll still have maintained this streak of not having a speeding ticket. But yeah, overall I have like 5 or 6 times getting pulled over in my car and only 2 on my motorcycle, even though on average I'm going significantly faster on my motorcycle than my car. So it's a pretty funny. I don't know, maybe they just figure I'm not even fucking with trying to catch the person when they're on a motorcycle. Too much work. I guarantee there have been plenty of cops that I've passed and I never know that I passed them, and they're just like, yeah, I'm not even gonna try to deal with that. I'm not trying to catch him. I would not be surprised. So yeah, but Canandaigua was definitely where I kind of honed my skills a little bit with riding and got to feel confident. And when I say Canandaigua, I mean like after the winter's over, when I brought it back in the March, April-ish area of 2023. And then I moved to Buffalo after I graduated, and I took the motorcycle out with me. I mean, I first took my car out there, and then I think I got a ride back to Canandaigua with a friend, and then got on my motorcycle and drove it out there. And when I first moved to Buffalo, I was just staying in this tiny little room for $500 a month, just long enough for me to actually scope out the city and determine where I wanted to live semi-permanently. And eventually I found that. But I had a pretty, I don't want to call it a serious crash, because it wasn't serious anywhere near compared to what serious could have been, or compared to what serious was for some of my pretty close friends when it comes to motorcycle riders. But I had a crash June 21st, 2023, and it was serious for me. I consider it serious. Other people wouldn't, because other people have had much more serious crashes, but I took a pretty significant chunk out of my knee. I didn't have, anybody that knows me in person now probably knows that I have these obnoxious looking knee pads. Well, that's why. I was on Arrow Drive. This is like, now for people who know where Buffalo is, or know streets and stuff inside Buffalo, but in the airport, there's like Arrow Drive. It splits right through it, and then it turns off onto another road that goes over to Mercy Flight. And I was just trying to ride over in this area so that I could watch airplanes take off, because I used to do that all the time. Whenever I would go to Albany or New York City or anything, I would always find a perfect spot in my car right next to the airport and watch the airplanes land right below me. And that's kind of what I wanted to do here. I had seen on Google Maps there was a picnic table next to Mercy Flight where you could do that or something. It ended up being closed off anyway, but that was where I was trying to go. I never made it there. As I was turning at the intersection, right after you come out of the tunnel, you're going southbound on Arrow Drive. You turn right there, go to Mercy Flight, and I was probably going, 15, 20 miles an hour around that turn, and there was gravel on the road, and I didn't see it till it was too late. The front tire slid right out on my bike, and I went down like the right side, like the front tire slid out to the left, so the right side of me hit the ground first. And I don't even know exactly how in terms of the angle or anything my knee hit, or if the bike actually sandwiched my knee into the ground. I know I didn't break anything, thankfully, but so it probably wasn't a sandwich, but whatever the case, the pavement just ate away at my knee, and it was so deep that you could definitely see, I don't know if it was a tendon or a ligament or something, but there was no, two different points in my knee, there was no skin left. That's an understatement to say that there was no skin left. There was almost no flesh left, towards some of these places. If you're skinny enough like I am, and pull up your pant leg a little bit, and you look at your knee, and you move your knee a little bit, you'll see that ligament in your leg kind of pop out, and I don't know if it's, or in your knee, not in your leg, but in your knee, right in the front, on the what do you call it, like the bottom part of your knee, right? I could see that, but like I could actually see it, if that makes sense. So it wasn't fun. I definitely hurt to walk for two months at least after. I was on constant pain medication, obviously. I had a huge bottle of ibuprofen, but the couple weeks following that was awful. Well, actually, let me say this. It was amazing and awful at the same time, because that was when I moved into my first actual apartment. Like, yeah, there was that place I was staying across the street from college, which technically was like a studio apartment, but that was always meant to be temporary. This apartment that I moved into was July 15th, so like, 2-3 weeks after my crash. But I looked at it a couple weeks before I actually moved in. So, honestly, I think it was like 4 days after my crash that I looked at the apartment. I had a showing, and so it was a horrible time in terms of the pain and the crash and everything, but it was also when I was basically moving into my new apartment, and I didn't have any furniture or anything at the time, so it was very very minimalistic to put it in fancy terms. Minimalistic in a broke type way, I guess you could say. But it was a nice apartment. That's where I still live to this day. And I was excited about that. But other than that, man, that was an experience that I don't prefer to have again. And I've always kept an eye out on gravel. When it first happened, I was actually embarrassed about showing off my bike because there's this big scratch on the right side of it. And as soon as I brought the bike home, I was like, okay, do I have like a cover or something I can put over this? Because I just don't even want people asking questions about it. And it turned out, I've left it on there. I've left it permanently. It only would have cost it would have cost like $400 to replace all the fairings, and you'd have to do them all at one time. And the thing would have looked like new. But I eventually decided, like, hey, I have this scar on my knee. I'm just going to leave the scar on a bike. It's almost like a connection, Both of us suffered this, and I'm just gonna leave it there. And I guess it makes for a good story too, but I don't really try to solicit attention from it. Honestly, if we're being more realistic, it's also partially because I'm broke. I don't want to. I'm not completely broke, but if I spend $400 on something, it's gonna be something that's going to have a marginal improvement in my life at this point in time. It's not gonna be something just aesthetics. It's going to be something. If I spend $400 on something, it's going to have to be utility or value. It's not going to be aesthetics. If I had $20,000 to go and spend, then yeah, maybe at that point, maybe we'll get a bigger bike. But that's another thing. I'm not sure I ever will. And this brings me to a new part of this episode, which is, this thing's gonna fucking kill me. It really is. And it's not because the motorcycle, and it's not because of other drivers, which is what everyone else will lead you to believe. It's because I'm a crazy retard when it comes to my driving. And I guess what I'll say more specifically is, I drive like I want to die. Specifically on highways, like, I'm pretty chill when we're talking about main streets and stuff, especially when I'm in my own town. But really anywhere. I don't drive too crazy on main streets. And when I say main streets, I mean anywhere where there's lights, like traffic lights. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one is more heavily policed and you can't see cops until it's too late. Number two, if you piss somebody off and then you have to stop at a red light and they are pulling up right behind you, you're kind of stuck with them unless you're just going to blatantly run the red light, which I don't like to do. But if I drive crazy and I piss somebody off, I like to know that I'm not going to be stuck at a red light with them right behind me. So I'll drive like a lunatic on the highway sometimes. But I know they're not going to catch me if they try, So it's like, hey, if you don't like the way I drive, you better hit me before I pass you, because as soon as I get past you, you're not going to get the opportunity to hit me again, because I'm going to be gone. So it's mainly highway driving that concerns me. And when I say concerns me, I mean, I don't want to die. I honestly don't. A lot of my biker friends ride similarly to me, to where they ride like they're gonna die. Not all of them. Definitely not all of them. Or they ride like they want to die, I should say. And the thing is, some of them actually express that, if they die riding their motorcycle, at least it was doing something they love. And you know what? That's fine. I kind of have that train of thought in some cases. But it's a little bit different, I feel like. In some of their cases, I feel like motorcycle is one of their more exclusive hobbies, motorcycle riding. And if that was to get taken away from them, they wouldn't have as much meaning of life. And I understand that when it comes to hobbies, like there are certainly, for a lot of people, hobbies that can take up a very large portion of what they spend their time and attention on, and they would kind of be lost without it. Motorcycles, for me, that's not quite it. Don't get me wrong, I extremely enjoy riding, but if I had to choose between living and riding, I would choose living. I would give up my motorcycle. Now, I hate it. I hate the thought of that because it's so fun. But recently, I have done some mental gymnastics in my head involving statistics and what is the likelihood that, given the way I ride on the highway, I'm gonna die or seriously get injured in a crash due to my own riding style. And honestly, I forget exactly what numbers I came to the percentage wise, but I think my analysis came to the conclusion, if I remember correctly. By the way, I'm 21 years old right now. That if I keep riding the way I do, and continue riding at the same frequency, in other words, the same number of days per year, that I would be in a serious or fatal crash by age 25. That was involving a number of statistics I had derived from both the internet and from common sense, based on how I ride specifically, and this was highway riding. And it's like, okay, so how do I change that number? And this was like, basically this most likely scenario. So like maybe you make it to, maybe if you were double as lucky, then you make it to age 30. But, well, I'm 21, so age 28. But, or 29. Can I not do math? 25 minus 21 is 4. 25 plus 4 is 29. So yeah, age 29. But I don't want to test my luck on that. And there are so many other things I want to do. Paragliding. Paragliding is something that I've, another one of those things I've looked at on Instagram Reels and just watched people doing it and be like, I want to do that. But, the difference between a motorcycle is a little bit more cost prohibitive, not even because of the equipment, but because you have to, I don't want to say you have to. I mean, yeah, you have to either jump out of a plane or jump off a mountain. And if you're going to mountains, that requires a lot of travel. And if you're going up in a plane, well, obviously that's pretty expensive. Whereas a motorcycle, you just get on it and ride. So it's a more cost-intensive hobby. That's why I haven't gotten into it. And also, I think you need some sort of endorsement from the FAA in order to even do it. Skiing, I like skiing a lot. Obviously, I want to be a helicopter pilot. I want to also fly airplanes. Soon, I'm going to be a truck driver. There is no world in which driving a truck is even close to as fun as riding a motorcycle. But flying a helicopter, it's arguable. And even if it wasn't for all these things, my point is there's so many, even just aside from operating vehicles and machines and stuff, there's just so much more in my life that I want to experience before I'm willing to accept the fact that I am probably going to die at a young age by motorcycle. So, how do I balance the fact that I really like this hobby with the fact that it's probably going to kill me given my riding style? Well, one of the things I could do is ride a little bit less like a freak, but I've basically come to the conclusion that doing that is like putting a jar of M&Ms in front of me and telling me to just stare at it and not eat it. Because when I get on a highway, and I have a 300. Okay, by the way, this ties back into what I was saying earlier of like, am I ever going to upgrade? No, I don't think I'm ever going to upgrade. And it's not a money thing because I could have bought a 600 or whatever for as much or less than I paid for my 300 because I bought a 2016, which is relatively newer, and it had pretty low mileage, 4,000 miles, no crashes, only 2 owners before me. So if I wanted, I could have went out and got a 600 at least, Yamaha R6, 2005, 10,000, 12,000 miles or something for as much or less of a price. It's not a money thing. I just wanted to start out with beginner's bike, but now it's like I've ridden 2 different R6s and I fucking love it. But the problem is I know I would abuse it and I know I'd kill myself. And I'm not even talking wheelies and stuff. I'm just talking the way I do. I max it out. I max out my 300. So I know I would do that with a 600, and I know that the chances of me dying would significantly increase. So I'm like, keep yourself away from that. The thing's going to be the death of you. Okay, do not buy yourself a 600 because I'm not going to be able to help myself. And so yeah, I could just not ride like a freak, but it's just difficult. It's difficult because the road's right in front of you, and the cars, the cars are the most, like, if I was riding on a highway and there were no cars, I would get bored, right? I would get bored pretty quick, unless it's very scenic. The actual fun part of riding a motorcycle for me, it's like a video game where you have to shoot the alien spaceships, right? Except you are maneuvering through obstacles. I mean, for me, cars are obstacles. That's all they are. And the video gamification of riding a motorcycle hits you in the face pretty quickly when you get in a serious crash. Like I said, I wouldn't consider myself to have been in a serious crash, but I was definitely in a crash that woke me up and was like, hey, stupid, this isn't a video game. Your mistakes have real life consequences to your physical body, right? And to other people. Now, on a motorcycle, I would definitely argue you're not nearly as dangerous to other people as if you were in a car or something. But there are definitely cases where, I mean, if you lose control of your motorcycle on a highway, it's not as much of an issue. But if it goes off and hits a pedestrian or something, obviously it's not going to be very good for him. But generally speaking, you're on a highway, you crash your motorcycle, you're most likely, unless someone swerves for you, that's a possibility. But generally speaking, your motorcycle is not going to kill somebody else. It's possible, but it's not likely, statistically speaking. But yeah, I mean, you crash on a highway, it has real life consequences for you. So I'm not implying that that I consider it to be a video game, but it's very similar to a video game in the mental stimulation and the enjoyment that you get out of the challenge of not just avoiding obstacles but maneuvering through obstacles. I don't even know how to explain it unless you're a rider yourself. I mean, it's not a feeling you get in a car. Like I've driven a car well before I've ridden a motorcycle, and it's just a different feeling. So unless you ride a motorcycle, unless you are a motorcycle rider, I don't think you can relate to even what I'm really saying with that obstacle. It's not obstacle avoidance, but like obstacle. I don't even know how to describe it, honestly. You're maneuvering past obstacles. It's like every car is a new obstacle. How do you get around it? How do you not let it get in your way? And I don't drive fast because I care about getting to places quickly. I do it because of the experience of doing it, and it's fun, and that's just about it. So, yeah, as far as reducing my riding style to be more civilized, that would be a good option, but I don't really think it's plausible in reality. So you have to ask, okay, what are the other options in order to preserve my life past age 25? And the one, well, I mean, obviously, I could sell a motorcycle. I'm not really into that. I love riding. So the other option would be just ride less frequently. And I think that's the one I've kind of settled on. So, I put my motorcycle, I initially put my motorcycle in storage a little bit earlier this semester, wow, I'm talking like I'm in college. Earlier this year than I did the past couple years. And I ended up having to take it back out because of an issue I was having with my car, to where the motorcycle was my means of transportation for a little bit. But I did decide on putting it away early a little bit. Putting it away a little bit earlier. There, we said that correctly. And another thing is just using it exclusively for leisure instead of utility. So long as I have another means of transportation. Don't take your motorcycle to work. Don't take it to places where you have to be there at a certain time. If you do go riding, don't have a pressure of having to be at a destination at a certain time. Just ride on your own pace. If you want to ride fast, then fine, Josh, ride fast. But don't do it because you have somewhere to be. Do it because that's how you want to ride. That's another thing. One time I was riding to work, I was late for work by 5 minutes or something. I was like, okay, Josh, I need you to calm the fuck down. If you die on this motorcycle, listen, it is what it is. But if you die on this motorcycle, I do not want it to be because you were trying to get to work on time, because at the end of the day, nobody's going to care 10 years from now that you're 10 minutes late to work. I want it to be because this is how you wanted to ride on this day, and it just happened. It happened that way. But I don't want it to be because you're racing to a destination that nobody really cares about. So that's probably one of the things I'm going to do is leisure exclusively, no utility. Ride the bike to, you want to go for a ride, go for a ride. But I'm not using it to go to the post office. I'm not throwing a backpack on and using it to go to Wegmans and get a half gallon of ice cream, throw it in my backpack and ride back. Not doing that on my bike anymore. Just toning it down. And, this isn't just because of the crash that I had. Two of my close friends had very serious near-death motorcycle accidents in the past year. One of my best friends here in Buffalo had an accident the same day as me, but a year later, so June 21st. And he wasn't even doing anything crazy. I mean, I wasn't doing anything crazy when I crashed. And neither was he. He was on 198. And he hit a pothole or something, had a death wobble for a little bit. But according to him, he wasn't going faster than like 35, 40 speed limit on that road is 30, and typically bikers, well, typically anybody, even vans and trucks, drive like 50 at least on that thing. But at that point, he was teaching somebody else how to ride or something, and so he was going slow. Point being, he wasn't doing anything crazy, but he crashed, and just because of the guardrail on the side, he broke 2 of his bones, his arm and his leg. And a similar situation with one of my other friends. It's like, just what are the, and not just them, but a lot of other people that I knew too. During the time that I knew them, another one of my friends broke his collarbone. Another one had a bunch of shit that happened to his arm on a guardrail, and some of these were the fault of somebody else, another driver, but in most cases they were the fault of the bikers themselves, just bad riding or road conditions. And I'm lucky because it hasn't happened to me yet. I mean, I had that knee injury, but other than that, I have no broken bones. And I would like to keep it that way, but the question is just, what do you have to do differently? Because I'm looking around me, and every one of my friends who I would consider to be as skilled as me, if not more skilled, are going down and ending up in hospitals and bedridden for months and out of work and almost dead financially. It's like, this is not where I see myself being. So, but it's where everybody around me who are doing the same things as me is ending up. So at some point, this logical, this question has, if you're not a stupid person, this question has to come in your mind of, if I'm doing the same thing as all these other people, and all these other people are getting shit results all around me as I'm, at what point is it going to be my turn, right? And so if you don't make an adjustment, then I think you're kind of dumb. That's where, I was like, what are the statistics? And I had a percentage, and I don't remember what it was. But needless to say, I determined I got to scale it back a little bit. Because listen, okay, if I'm 70 years old, whatever, but I'm 20, okay, I want to learn how to fly a helicopter. I don't need to die on a motorcycle before I learn how to fly a helicopter. Like, let's wait until you get a little bit farther along in life before you kill yourself. I mean, I already know how to ride. I already know what the experience is. Maybe flying a helicopter will be so much fun that I just give up riding, being like, okay, I'm not willing to have any of this risk at all. I'd rather fly. Maybe that'll be where I end up. Riding is extremely fun. And, there is when you talk about benefits of riding a motorcycle, people justify, the gas mileage, you get to your destination quicker. Sure. But at the end of the day, it's because it's fun. And there's no feeling like it. If you think you felt adrenaline driving, or doing anything else for that matter, you've never ridden on a sport bike going around traffic. Swerving through traffic on a 2 or 3 lane highway. You've just never done it, because it's a complete different feeling, especially the near death, like, holy shit, I almost just died doing that. Like, I can't, like, those tractor trailers closed in on me from both sides that I had like 2 inches and I just made it out of there. That feeling you never get doing anything else. And I guess I'm 20, 21, so I guess I haven't lived long enough to know other things that might give you that same adrenaline rush. Like, I haven't skydived, I haven't jumped off cliffs, bungee jumping, all this stuff. But at the same time, nothing that I have ever experienced has given me any similar level of adrenaline as that. And I'd like to not die, so I'm toning it back. But, this episode is very somber, I guess. Or very, I don't want to say it's negative, but definitely considering some of the darker sides of this hobby. But that's because it's where my mind's at the moment. I mean, when all your friends are dropping like flies, you gotta ask, is this worth it? Now, as far as the publicity, it's kind of interesting because, so I have a couple reels on Instagram. I think I have 100 posts at this point. And then I have a Reels, which I keep them out of my posts. I don't like for those two things to be combined. All my Reels are like motorcycle stuff, which I have 6 of them at this point. And don't get me wrong, I think I look pretty damn good on that thing. But when it comes to incorporating it into my identity, I try to avoid that. Like some people have it on their profile picture. I could easily have a pretty decent profile picture of me with a helmet on and stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't consider riding a sport bike to be as part of my identity. When it comes to Reels, at the moment, I don't really have anything else that would make decent content for Reels. So I've, figured I wanted to put some of that stuff out there, and I don't have really much else that could compete with it, so that's why it's the exclusive thing. But when you ask me who I am, sport bike rider is not something that comes to mind. Like, I'll say I'm a Part 107 drone pilot. I've gotten brainwashed into saying pilot. It's not a drone pilot. You're not a pilot. You're not flying. It's a toy remote control, whatever. Okay. I'm a business owner, and that is accurate. And a couple other things. I'm an aspiring helicopter pilot. A lot of different things that I will feel comfortable putting in my identity. Location: Buffalo, Miami, Seattle. I'll associate them with me to some extent with my identity. But sport bikes, it's a mad fun hobby. I think I look good on it, and I'm very proud of it. I have a lot of fun with it, so I definitely play with posting about it and stuff on my Instagram, and it makes for decent content, decent profile enhancement, I guess you could say. But at the end of the day, if I get a new bike, or if I get rid of my bike, which I don't intend on doing, but if I did, I would not have much of a deficiency in my profile. In my opinion, I would just find something else to slowly replace it with. Whereas somebody else who, their entire identity depends on their full face helmet being over their face, and all their Instagram followers who don't know them in person have never seen their face or some shit. It's like, yeah, well, good for you. You've just built your entire identity around a motorcycle that you might not even. What happens if you lose your driver's license? I don't know. I guess I've heard people say it like this before. Don't ever build your identity into something that can easily be taken away from you, and that can be anything. I mean, that can be a relationship. If you have a spouse or you have a girlfriend or something, don't build your identity into your partner, because if they die or they leave you or the relationship just goes south, where is that going to leave you? Don't put your identity into, just into possessions, into a car. Now that's going to be hard for me. I'm very into getting an Audi here shortly. That now I will say, even more than a motorcycle, I'm going to have to fight myself to not build that into my identity, because I am going to love that thing when I get it. But yeah, don't tie yourself up. And when I say identity, I don't even mean your personal, mental health stuff. That's not even what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about like the image that you portray to other people, more so, because I do think that public image to some extent is important. I think that how you portray yourself to other people is important. I think there are a lot of cases where I really don't care, and I was actually thinking about this to myself earlier today, which is funny, and I guess it's probably why I'm thinking about it now. Actually, I was also listening to a podcast about that. That's why I was thinking about it earlier today. But basically, when it comes to my thoughts on whether or not you should care what other people think about you, I agree with what this person on the podcast earlier was saying, which is yes, absolutely, because the way that other people think about you is going to greatly affect your success in life in a lot of different areas, both relationships, employment, and those two things basically affect everything else. I mean, so yeah, it matters a lot what other people think about you, but in my interpretation of this, yes, by default, it matters what other people think about you. But if I want to do something my own way, then that takes precedent. That takes priority. In other words, there are a lot of people that hate me when I ride that motorcycle. And I mean like cars that I pass. And, you know, it happens to me too. When I'm in a car, and it doesn't even have to be a biker, just another vehicle passes me like, vroom, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Do you really have to be going that fast? So like, it's not even like, it just depends on what vehicle you're in and who you are. Or I should say, it doesn't depend on who you are. It depends on exclusively what vehicle you're in, which is funny, if that makes any sense to somebody listening. But basically, one person on a sport bike can be passing other cars and be like, I don't care what you think. But then when that same person is in a car, he's like, oh, look at those stupid sport bikes passing me. In that case, this person being me is like, I don't know if I'm the only person being inconsistent like that, but it's just funny to realize how different of perspectives you have depending on your point of view or your reference point. But yeah, there are people who definitely dislike me, and I don't care. And the reason I don't care is because I prioritize my satisfaction in the fact that I'm riding a motorcycle and enjoying myself over what other people think about me. But if I don't have a priority that I am, prioritizing, then by default, I'll try to, I guess, put out a decent image that gets people to be drawn to you to some extent. But then if I decide that I want to do something or say something for whatever reason that might cause people to not like me, but that's a side effect and it's not a goal. If I want to do something and other people don't like it, I say, well, go fuck yourself. I think that a good way of thinking about it is that by default, you prioritize yourself, okay? And you have to, and this isn't selfish, because if you don't keep yourself in mind, then everybody else around you is going to get a worse version of yourself if you're not taking care of yourself. This is just basic stuff, right? So prioritize yourself, and prioritizing yourself includes trying to ensure that other people don't see you as a clown. I mean, when you go to apply for a job, you try to have a somewhat decent resume, right? That's the same idea. I mean, the same idea as an Instagram profile. So, and then if you have, in the process of prioritizing yourself, if you have another priority that supersedes your desire for other people to consider you a normal, or I don't even know, just decent person. Listen, I can't really think of an example off the top of my head other than just passing people at high speeds on a motorcycle, but there are plenty of things in which other people are going to be like, what are you even doing? And I'm sorry, but listen, I just don't have the time to explain this to you right now, and I'm just not going to expend the energy. So, yeah, by default, I feel like it's in your best interest to put forward a good image. But at the end of the day, if that conflicts with something that you want to do what you want to do and figure the rest out later. I mean, this podcast is a great example, if I'm being entirely honest. This is something where if I had the exclusive goal of making myself seem professional and put together and everything else, I would not be doing this podcast right now. I'm doing this podcast because I want to do it, because I want to improve my speaking skills a little bit, specifically my speaking skills under pressure. And I also kind of want to get used to putting myself out in the public a little bit more. Do I think I'm going to run for politics? I really doubt it, but I do think that eventually I'm going to be dealing with a lot more people. I mean, I already have... I already have employees. I already have people that I'm working with on a contractual level, case-by-case basis. I already have a lot of people that I'm doing business with to some degree or another. And I think that's, hopefully, if I'm not a complete failure, that is going to increase exponentially. And I would like to improve my communication skills. There's a lot of things, a lot of goals that I have when it comes to why I'm doing this podcast. And when it comes to the image that I'm putting out, honestly, I think, if I'm being honest, this is probably, especially this episode in particular, my last episode was probably fine, probably gave me a little bit of credibility and, oh, this dude's kind of smart and stuff. But this episode, if somebody listens to it, they're probably like, oh, what is this kid even talking about? Like, holy shit, this kid is not put together at all. And you know what? That's probably more detrimental to my image than anything else. But you know what? I don't care. Why don't I care? Because this is something that I think is going to benefit me. I think that doing this type of thing is good practice for my communication skills. And so I'm just going to do it. And if it, quote unquote, hurts my image in some way, yeah, sure, that's a negative side effect. But that comes secondary to my primary goal of improving myself in some form or fashion. Now, if I did not have that primary goal of improving communication skills and I just went on the internet and started doing random stuff that was detrimental to my image in some fashion, I would consider that not very smart. But because I have a primary goal of doing something that helps me more than it hurts me, or more than it hurts my image, quote unquote, I'm just going to do it. And if you don't like it, again, sorry, can't help you, not my problem. So that's kind of the approach I take when it comes to anything else. Now, I would be doing I'm going to transition away from whatever I was just talking about and kind of come back to the sport bike part. I would be doing a disservice to anybody listening to this episode that has made it this far, which, wow, congrats to you, because I have been rambling. Okay, I would be doing a disservice to all those people if I did not kind of jump in and say, do I recommend that you buy a sport bike or a motorcycle at all? That's a good question. You know, it really depends on what your priorities are in life. I did it because I wanted it. Honestly, I didn't get anybody's permission before I did it. So if you're listening to a podcast trying to decide whether or not you should do it, I would say probably don't do it. Just because I feel like you don't want it enough. And if you don't want it enough, then it's not worth potentially ruining your life over. I wanted it enough to where I just went out and did it. And if I get in a serious crash, I'm not going to be happy, but at the same time, it was a choice that I made. And the choice that I made was to buy a motorcycle, and I did it because I wanted it bad enough. And how do you know if you want it bad enough? Because you just go and do it. You don't ask anybody. If you're looking up videos as to whether or not you should do it, then you don't want it bad enough. I'm sorry. You don't want it bad enough to ruin your life over, okay? What you're doing is you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, this would be cool. My friends would think I'm cool, or that sort of thing. And don't do it for that reason, okay? If you're sitting in a hospital with broken bones, you want it to be because that was what mattered to you in life, and you fucked yourself up knowing that you were doing something that truly brought you enjoyment and it just went sideways. You don't want it to be because you tried to impress somebody and went sideways. That is just a really, really bad motivation for doing anything. And it's going to leave you absolutely depressed. And I don't say that from experience, but I just say it because I can imagine what that would be like, getting a hobby and then it going so sideways as to make you bedridden in a hospital. And you got the hobby because you wanted to impress somebody, and now the opposite has happened, and you're like, well, that was a waste of my life and a waste of perfectly good bones. And I just can't imagine that feeling. So no, I mean, you know, if you're having to ask other people's opinion as to whether or not you should get into something, you probably don't want it bad enough, as I've already said a couple times. Now let's say you do want it, and you're like, okay, any tips? Okay, that's interesting, because before I recorded this podcast, I didn't even anticipate myself giving tips, so this is completely on the fly. yeah, make sure you always have, I mean, this is going to be basic stuff that other people would tell you too. Just update your, keep your bike very well maintained. Good tires, good, change your oil frequently. I know, pretty boring stuff. Now listen, look out for gravel. If you get a sport bike, start out with a 300 or 400. And honestly, I don't see a need for it. Unless you're like one of my friends who riding is their only hobby and they would not be able to live without riding. They would get depressed, like seriously depressed if they weren't able to ride on a motorcycle. Unless you're like that, stick with a 300 to 400. Maybe go a little bit higher, 500. But if you get a 600, it's because you want to do a little bit crazier stuff, and that's fine. But you just have to acknowledge that the more power you have, the more speed you're going to have, and therefore the more speed you're going to be tempted to use, and higher likelihood that you're going to ride crazier. And I already ride crazy on a 300, unless you start with a 300 or 400. That's all I'm going to say, okay? If you can't go crazy enough with those two things as you want to, then fine, upgrade. But make sure, if you upgrade to a 600, make sure that that hobby is important enough to you that you're willing to go to the hospital for it. That's all I'm going to say. I know this is a dark episode. It's darker, honestly, than I intended for it to be. But this is your life, This is your life. And I'll probably never upgrade. I don't know what I'll do. I certainly have no plans at the moment. It's been 2 years in, and listen, I'm a pro on that 300. I don't even care if it sounds arrogant to say that, because it's just factually correct. I have had a lot of quote unquote close calls in terms of inches, but not in terms of probability, because I had so much confidence in my ability to handle some of these situations. That is a close call when you think about physics and inches. Even, I don't want to say centimeters. That's a bit of an exaggeration. But yeah, I'm very, very good. But despite being very good on that motorcycle, I have no intentions of upgrading. I think I'll stay right where I am on a 300. And I can do some pretty crazy stuff. So unless you really are willing to go all out, I don't see why you would get 600 or higher. Start with the 300 or 400. What else? Get 2,000 miles under your belt before you start getting cocky. I would say that's another recommendation I have for you. And when I say cocky, I mean like passing people at high speeds on turns and curves and all that stuff on double yellows. Like, don't be doing that shit when you're just starting out. You're gonna die, okay? Because the thing is, you're not used to braking, using your front brakes hard while turning. It's just, you're gonna overshoot turns. You gotta get used to what your bike does. Don't go crazy when you first buy the thing. Wheelies, I've tried doing wheelies a little bit. I don't want to screw up my bike too much, so I haven't done them too much. It is a fun idea. I actually want to learn it a little bit more. Low speed, obviously. Low speed wheelies. I'll probably get some crash bars, put them on my bike. I'll get better gear by that point. I don't think wheelies in a somewhat contained environment, even if by contained you just mean slow, is pretty safe in my opinion. Relatively safe compared to high-speed riding. Other tips, I would say it doesn't hurt to have a camera recording all the time. The problem with that, and I actually bought an Insta360 to put on the back of my bike. I have a mount back there and everything. I'm tempted to do shit that I wouldn't do typically for content when I do that. And, by that I mean lane splitting, crazy things that I wouldn't even normally lane split just to get the content. And it's like, eventually I was like, no. In the same way that I'm not willing to die to try to get to work at a certain time. I'm also not willing to die for content. The only thing I'm willing to die for is because I was doing something that I enjoy doing and that I love doing, and it just happened to go sideways. Even that, I'm not really all that willing to die for, but at least I'm a little bit more willing than to say, oh, but I wanted the content. So I stopped having a camera rolling for that reason, even though if I ever got in a crash, or if a car ever hit me, or if I ever had a police interaction or something, it might come in handy legally or otherwise. I just would rather not have the pressure of feeling that any of my crazy stuff is going to be recorded, because I feel like that makes me have a little bit different decision making than my smarter self would have done. So whether or not you get a camera is up to you, but just keep that in mind. I don't really have any other tips. I will say overall, now this has been a dark episode, but overall this has been like a very riding motorcycles has been a very, should I say, critical, very prominent portion of my life over the past 2 years. I mean, almost all my friends in Buffalo at this point, which is where I moved to, I met through riding motorcycles, right? Motorcycle groups and stuff. So listen, it's a fun hobby, but if your only goal is socialization, or I don't know, finding a girl or something like that, listen, there are much better and much less dangerous hobbies or social circles that you can engage in that do not involve putting your body in a line of fire constantly. And by line of fire, I mean huge masses of metal that are moving in all directions all around you at all different speeds, aka cars and trucks. Semi-trucks are scary, when you think about it. It's scary for a motorcyclist anyway. Yeah, if you're doing it for the social aspect, don't get a motorcycle, but it's been I've loved it. I've loved it. And, I'm starting to lose energy on this episode because it's like 11 o'clock at night, and normally I go to bed at 9. Yep, normally I go to bed at 9. You heard that right. Anyway, I'm probably going to wrap this up. Good night, everyone.